Last month, a North Korean defector revealed the communist regime's plans to build a massive nuclear submarine, twice as big, it's reported, as their largest current nuclear sub. A satellite image corroborated this report to a certain extent, zeroing in on an image of what appears to be part of this submarine's hull in Kim Jong-un's Sinpo South shipyard. This, of course, comes after North Korea conducted its 5th nuclear detonation test last month. Again, its largest test yet, launching several long-range missiles, one of them even launched from a submarine. The dangerously erratic regime even says they're prepared to attack at the slightest sign of intrusion in their country. Take a look.
North Korea has slammed the joint South Korean-American annual military exercises as provocative and has threatened a preemptive nuclear strike. 25,000 US troops are taking part in the exercises, due to end on September the 2nd. Exercises the North says are preparations for an invasion. North and South Korea are still technically at war as an armistice ended their 1950-53 conflict.
Joining me now is geopolitical risk analyst and principal at Trilogy Advisors, John Sitilides. John, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, Liz.
All right, John, talk to me about this report, this nuclear submarine that the defector, like I said in the introduction, claimed North Korea was building. Are they close to obtaining that?
Well, the satellite photos are showing that they are clearly developing a capacity for this. And Liz, unfortunately, we shouldn't be surprised at all. The North Koreans in the last half-decade have been surprising the United States and the West across a whole range of very sophisticated weapon capabilities. And between the growing power of their atomic weapons, their nuclear weapons, with blasts that are increasing with alarming scale in recent months, and also their ability to develop a ballistic missile capability that many people believe now is able to strike perhaps 2/3 of the continental United States. The one piece of good news here so far is that as they're looking to miniaturize nuclear weapons, they haven't gotten to that point yet, but a number of specialists believe, Liz, that in about half a decade, and this is something on the next president's portfolio, the North Koreans will be able to put a nuclear warhead on a missile that can strike the continental U.S.
Right, it's very scary. The next president, regardless of who it is, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, is going to have a huge mess to clean up with North Korea after how far they've been able to push the boundaries under Barack Obama. John, let me ask you this. North Korea says that they're planning, or they're willing to attack at the slightest sign of intrusion. Who are they going to attack? South Korea?
Well, this is the kind of escalated rhetoric we hear from the North Koreans every time there's either another round of war games between allies, the United States and South Korea, allies, the United States and Japan, or whether there are, say, new systems that are being installed in the region. Now we have the THAAD missiles, the anti-missile defense system that the U.S. is placing to help defend South Korea against North Korean missiles, now that they continue to demonstrate the ability and the willingness to detonate and to fire missiles 200 to 300 miles away from the North Korean area, into the Sea of Japan, into Japan's exclusive economic zone, and certainly in areas that directly threaten South Korea's economy and well-being. And keep in mind, Liz, that South Korea is the world's 5th largest exporting nation and the 9th largest importing nation in the world. So the economic consequences of chaos and destabilization are very pronounced, and my fear is that we're not going to hear the end of this kind of provocative rhetoric from North Korea.
Right, it would have a global impact. It wouldn't just be isolated to that region in Asia, is what I'm hearing you say, if that's correct. It seems that North Korea, though, is worried about preemptive strikes here. They're worried that South Korea, the United States, aren't just conducting these exercises, that they actually plan to wage an attack against North Korea. We have no indication that this would be true. These joint exercises are something that have happened before, and they will happen again in the future. And the South Korean ambassador to Washington, D.C. said there haven't even been discussions with the United States about preemptive strikes against North Korea. What do you know about this?
Well, this is what makes dealing with North Korea such a dangerous situation, such a dangerous game, although I hate to use that word and minimize the importance of what's happening here, Liz. Let's look at some facts first. The North Koreans have an arsenal of anywhere between 12 to 20 nuclear weapons today. They are a nuclear state, and the extent to which President Obama has stated that a nuclear North Korea is unacceptable to the United States is a lie on its face. North Korea is already a nuclear state. Now, they can't yet strike the continental United States with a ballistic missile. They can put a nuclear weapon on an airplane. We know that with devastating effect what kind of impact that can have going back to the September 11th attacks. But in many ways, the North Koreans already have an effective nuclear deterrent against any type of a U.S. strike against North Korea. And how many planners in Washington really believe that a U.S. president would be willing to risk losing Los Angeles to save Seoul, the capital and economic engine of South Korea, in the event of a war between North Korea and South Korea? So the North Koreans have us in a bind. And the most difficult part about this, Liz, is the Chinese government really is best positioned to help de-escalate this conflict in North Korea. But as long as the Chinese are using North Korea as a buffer against Japan and South Korea to keep the U.S. on edge in the region, they actually feel that the nukes are less of a threat to them than the possibility of regime collapse in North Korea and millions of North Koreans spilling over into China's borders. So it's a horribly complex conundrum, and there aren't really any good U.S. options right now because of the kind of blunders we've seen over the years.
Right, and John, there's almost some irony here that President Obama doesn't want to acknowledge the identity of North Korea as a nuclear power when here in the United States, his entire social platform revolves around people's own personal identities. Some irony there. But John, let me ask you, do you expect any problems besides this escalating rhetoric to occur during the joint U.S.-South Korean exercises that are coming up here shortly?
I'd like to say I don't foresee anything serious happening, Liz, and we've gone through a series of war games over the years without any major escalation. But who knows what's captivating the mind of Kim Jong-un right now if we see significant sort of naval shelling of the area near the war games, any kind of air activity or drones to continuously harass U.S. and South Korean forces. So I think that's always a possibility. I think what's more dangerous is what is the North Korean willingness to continue to escalate the rhetoric and to threaten nuclear weapons doing to U.S. alliances with Japan and South Korea? And will we see a situation, Liz, where those countries feel the U.S. does not have their back and they decide to pursue a nuclear weapons program of their own? And then you'll see not a North Korean response, but a Chinese response. So we're seeing the possibility of very aggravated nuclear proliferation in the East China Sea and in the Pacific Rim area in a way that can be very, very destabilizing, not just for the region, but for the world economy. And we don't really have a sense, at least from President Obama, whose policy to date has been something called strategic patience, which I think is a euphemism for do almost nothing. And so the next president is being handed over this horrifically complex problem in ways that I don't think will serve our interests in any meaningful way.
Right, and from what it sounds like you're absolutely correct that it would lead to the entire destabilization of the entire region, not just an erratic regime like North Korea where we don't know exactly what they're going to do next, but just the entire proliferation of nuclear weapons in Asia right there. John, thank you so much for coming on the show talking about this. It's always great to talk to you. Our next tipping point with John Guandolo is Hillary's sidekick Huma and her sketchy ties to Sharia law. Stick with us, that's straight ahead.